Hello, and thank you for viewing this Environmental Impact Report scoping meeting presentation for the San Francisco Gateway Project. My name is Laura Adelman, and I'm a Senior Outreach Specialist at AECOM. AECOM is the environmental consultant for the City of San Francisco for this project. This scoping meeting is an early step in the environmental review process and provides notice to the public that the San Francisco Planning Department is preparing an Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, and has issued an initial study in connection with the project. This initial study evaluates the proposed project to identify significant environmental effects to be analyzed in the EIR. We are seeking your comments on the scope and content of the EIR, as well as any comments you have on the initial study for the San Francisco Gateway Project by April 8, 2022. During this presentation, we will go over the following topics: the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, review process, an overview of the San Francisco Gateway Project, the CEQA schedule, and finally, how you can participate in the CEQA process. In San Francisco, the Planning Department leads the CEQA process for projects in compliance with state and local requirements. The Planning Department's process and review is guided by CEQA, the CEQA guidelines, and Chapter 31 of the San Francisco Administrative Code. The purpose of CEQA is to inform decision makers and the public about the proposed project's potential environmental effects, engage the public in the environmental review process, disclose significant impacts on the environment, and avoid or reduce potential impacts of the project by identifying alternatives and mitigation measures. Under CEQA, the Planning Department studies the project's impacts on the environmental topics shown on this slide. For the SF Gateway project, the Planning Department published an initial study on March 9, 2022, together with a notice of preparation of an EIR. The initial study analyzes the physical environmental impacts of the project on certain topics, such as recreation, shadow, and biological resources, and determined that the project could not have a significant impact on these topic areas. The initial study also finds that the project could result in a significant environmental impact on archaeological, tribal cultural, and paleontological resources, as well as ground-level wind currents. The initial study identifies mitigation measures that would avoid significant impacts to these topic areas. The Planning Department is now preparing an EIR for the San Francisco Gateway project. Based on the initial study analysis, the Planning Department determined that the project may have significant impacts related to transportation and circulation, air quality, and noise. Therefore, the EIR will be a focused EIR that will analyze the three topics highlighted on this slide that may have potentially significant impacts on the environment. The EIR must be prepared for the proposed action prior to any final decision by the Planning Commission about whether to recommend approval of the San Francisco Gateway project. The focused EIR will describe the existing environment and identify both individual and cumulative impacts that would be potentially significant as a result of the San Francisco Gateway project. This next part of the presentation will focus on describing the proposed project. The San Francisco Gateway project is located at 749 Toland Street and 2000 McKinnon Avenue in the northwest corner of San Francisco's Bayview neighborhood. The rectangular project site is bounded by Kirkwood Avenue to the north, Rankin Street to the east, McKinnon Avenue to the south, and Toland Avenue to the west. A Caltrans easement containing a two-level elevated portion of I-280 runs through the middle of the site, directly above Selby Street. Zoned as PDR2, which allows for a range of production, distribution, and repair uses, the area surrounding the project site predominantly consists of commercial and industrial uses, featuring relatively large blocks and many discontinuous streets. Buildings within a 3-block range of the project site are typically large warehouse-type structures. The existing site itself is currently occupied by 4 single-story warehouse buildings originally constructed in 1943, totaling approximately 450,000 square feet of production, distribution, and repair space. The current buildings support a variety of production, distribution, and repair users, including automotive storage and fleet management, parcel delivery, and general food-related and temporary storage. Some of the space remains vacant. The adjacent streets are unimproved with no existing sidewalks or other streetscape amenities. The existing site does not feature any landscaping or street trees. The proposed project would demolish the existing 4 single-story buildings on site and would construct 2 new 3-story buildings to provide roughly 1 million square feet of new production, distribution, and repair space. The total building area, including internal circulation, support space, accessory office, and parking areas, would total approximately 2 million square feet. Vehicular access to the project site and circulation around its perimeter would be altered from existing conditions to improve pedestrian safety, vehicle flow, and access. The project proposes converting Kirkwood Avenue from a 2-way street to a single-lane, eastbound, 1-way street, and converting a portion of McKinnon Avenue between Toland and Selby Streets from a 2-way street to a single-lane, westbound, 1-way street. Curb cuts and vehicle access points are distributed evenly along the building perimeter to move vehicles efficiently into and out of the buildings and minimize the number of vehicles waiting on the street to access the site. The project proposes continuous sidewalks on all immediately adjacent street frontages, including Selby Street, to improve pedestrian safety and access around the exterior of the site. The 2 proposed buildings would be approximately the same size, shape, and dimensions and would be oriented similarly on site. Each building would include 3 levels of production, distribution, and repair space, and an active rooftop equipped with roof screening with an integrated solar array. The active rooftop would provide space for parking, storage, and vehicle or equipment staging. Each level will have direct access to vehicle circulation and logistics yards at grade and elevated. A system of vehicle ramps provides full-service vehicle access at each level of the building. Each building would be approximately 97 feet tall. Together, the 2 buildings would provide just over 1 million square feet of production, distribution, and repair space, including 35,000 square feet of dedicated ground floor maker space to support the production of goods, such as food and beverage processing, furniture making, and a variety of other similar types of uses. An additional 1 million square feet of production, distribution, and repair support spaces, which includes logistics yards, vehicle circulation and parking, as well as 8,400 square feet of accessory retail space also located on the ground level. The project features 1,166 vehicle parking spaces, 72 vehicle loading spaces, and 112 bicycle parking spaces. The buildings are intended to accommodate a variety of users. No specific tenants have been identified for the project, and it is anticipated that the mix of production, distribution, and repair tenants would change over time. For the purposes of this environmental review, the use mix analyzed consists of parcel, delivery service, and wholesale and storage users as the predominant building tenants. This rendering is a conceptual section through the building showing how a set of users might occupy and access the various spaces. Each production, distribution, and repair level provides an area for the primary tenant activity to occur. For example, the storage of goods on the ground level with parcel sorting and product assembly on the levels above. The adjacent logistics yard areas support vehicle loading and unloading so that all loading and unloading activities will occur within the buildings. The vehicle circulation areas connect each tenant space to the system of ramps, which facilitates vehicles traveling up and down the building. The ground level of each building features street access makerspace along the entire Kirkwood Avenue frontage and retail space fronting McKinnon Avenue. Makerspace is a type of light industrial use and includes businesses such as food and beverage processing, apparel and other garment products, furniture and fixtures, and printing. Pedestrian entries and lobbies would be located mid-block on Toland, Selby, and Rankin Streets. Sidewalk bulb outs at building entries and retail storefronts with additional streetscaping elements and bicycle parking would be provided. In addition to the proposed project, the environmental review will also analyze an expanded streetscape variant. The expanded streetscape variant comprises the same land uses and site plan as the proposed project, but proposes rebuilding the entire cross-section of the streets along the project perimeter to what are known as Better Streets standards, which identify and define design guidelines for the pedestrian realm along streets where people walk, shop, sit, play, or interact outside of moving vehicles. The variant would include improvements from the center line of each adjacent street outward to the property line of the adjacent lots. These improvements would include new roadways, curb cuts, sidewalks, street trees, and other amenities. Prior to approving the project, the Planning Commission is required to certify the Environmental Impact Report. The Environmental Impact Report is not a project approval. The project would require several entitlements and approvals from the city, including adoption of CEQA findings and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, approval of planning code and zoning map amendments for Height District reclassification and to adopt a new special use district, approval of a development agreement, and permits from various city departments, including the Building Department, Public Works, and the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. Since 2016, the project sponsor has engaged in community outreach efforts to inform the public of the project and solicit their questions and input. Ongoing conversations have occurred with neighboring businesses, interested community groups, and various individuals throughout the process. Outreach efforts will continue as the project moves forward, and aspects of the project's conceptual design may change through the planning process. We will now discuss the CEQA review process and how the public may provide input. The Planning Department is beginning the environmental review process, and we are seeking the public's input on the scope and content of the environmental analysis, specifically any potentially significant environmental issues, comments on the environmental analysis methods or depth of analysis, measures to avoid or lessen significant environmental impacts, mitigation, or alternatives to reduce impacts. This is also an opportunity to let us know if you would like to be notified or receive updates as the environmental review progresses. The Planning Department would like to be clear that the focus of this scoping process and scoping meeting is to seek comments on the environmental effects of the proposed project. Comments related to the project merits, or other non-environmental impacts should be directed to Rich Sucre at richard.sucre@sfgov.org. I'll now go over the environmental review schedule. The Notice of Preparation of an EIR and Initial Study were published on March 9, 2022, and the current schedule anticipates publishing the draft EIR in late 2022. To seek further input at that stage, a notice of availability of the draft EIR will be distributed to interested parties, and there will be a public hearing before the Planning Commission during the draft EIR's public comment period. Following the close of the draft EIR comment period, a responses to comments document addressing significant environmental points raised by commenters will be published. This document will also identify any changes to the draft EIR as necessary to fully respond to the comments received. Following publication of the responses to comments document, the Planning Commission will consider certification of the final EIR, adoption of CEQA findings, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding approval of the San Francisco Gateway project. We would like to thank you for viewing this presentation and for your participation in the public scoping process for the San Francisco Gateway project. This video is posted on the sfplanning.org/sfceqadocs website, along with a notice of availability, notice of preparation, and initial study. To submit a written comment on the scope of the San Francisco Gateway project's environmental review, or to request hard copies of any documents, please email cpc.sfgatewayproject@sfgov.org or address your comments to Elizabeth White, San Francisco Planning Department, 49 South Van Ness Avenue, Suite 1400, San Francisco, California, 94103. Verbal comments may be provided by calling 628-652-7557. Comments are due by April 8, 2022. Thank you again for your time and participation.